me a real perspective on how rapidly Australia has grown over the years is that when the people who were then in charge of the city decided we needed a university in Australia back in the 1830s, 1840s, they started toying with the idea of a university. They finally came up with the idea that there would be a Sydney University. Now, for those of you out of town, you might not know where Sydney Uni is. It's just a little way up George Street, which becomes atop the highest hill of the city. And you could look out from Sydney University across the entire city. And when it was first announced that this is where Australia's first university would be placed, the general public reaction was unanimous. Tremendous idea. We need a university. That is great. Why have you chosen to put it in the middle of bloody nowhere? Because at the time, back in 1850, from here, 45 minutes up the road by horse and cart was so far away, it was beyond the realms of perception for people. To put something so important so far out of the way of what would ever be part of the city of Sydney, it would be the equivalent now of putting in a major university double the distance of the other side of Penrith from where we are now. And in that 150 years, Sydney, and indeed this entire country, has expanded to fill a vast amount of the space. And as we've done that, we've grown as a people, we've grown as a nation, we've grown to be part of the world. And one of the things that has recently exploded in ushering us forward, of course, is the onset of technology. And the geeks and nerds in the room don't need me to tell them how amazing that has been. I mean, it's fascinating to even look at this thing that we've been given here today. 10 years ago, if you were told you're going to be given one of these memory sticks containing all of the information of today's presentation, press releases, data, graphics, etc., you would have had no idea what the person was talking about, because I'm pretty sure there was no such thing as a memory stick back in those days. It's part and parcel of our communication these days. But at the same time as those technologies have moved forward and made our world one increasingly small place, and we can now connect with people around the world in real time on anything we want, at the same time there's been a desperate desire for people to have more of a sense of locality and community. And for me, that's what's so exciting about this project, bringing the same sort of technology that is making the entire world within reach back to the smallest, most intimate community levels. We're going to hear today from several of the people involved in the project. We're going to get an update on some of how the trials are going, and then hear where to from now for the Australian community domain. So please welcome our first speaker to tell us all about it, and welcome here today, John Delabosco, Minister for Commerce, Minister for Finance, Industrial Relations, Ageing and Disability Services in New Zealand.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for that very generous welcome, everybody. I'd like to obviously commence my remarks by joining Adam in acknowledging the traditional Aboriginal custodians of this land, the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation, and pay my respects to their ancestors and to the living custodians of the ancient land. And also to acknowledge, of course, that as guests today we're occupying one of the fantastic buildings of post-settlement times, or post-European settlement times, and this very interesting kind of history that's associated with the Customs House and the authority of the British Empire, and then the authority of Queen Victoria, and then finally the authority of Federation, and of course now its most recent manifestation and its most recent usage, I suppose, underlining the authority of Clover Moore, I suppose, I don't know. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that we're here today, as Adam said, and I can add one thing to Adam's remarks: you should never follow someone as skillful in communications as Adam in any kind of presentation. One of the things that I was reminded of during the story is I'm a great fan of the novelist Nicola Cusack, who was writing about 85 years after the people started thinking about having a Sydney University. And even then, she was writing about the outer western suburbs of Sydney. And if you've read any of the books, you know that she's talking about Summer Hill. And so that sort of probably also communicates and emphasises the point I was making. Community geographic domain names provide communities with a single point of access or information about their own city or town. Everybody knows that cliche information is knowledge, knowledge is power. It will then provide those communities with opportunities to manage their own website presence using communities' geographic name as their web address. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank AU Community Domains Trust and AUDA for choosing New South Wales to launch what is truly a national initiative. Communities in New South Wales, in particular Bathurst and Wollongong, have played an essential role in the creation and development of community geographic domain names. The concept of community domain names was the idea of the Bathurst community. It started with a community-based working group, and then, with the support of the New South Wales Government, was further developed and tested with the Bathurst and Wollongong communities. Both those communities now have fully operating whole-of-community websites using geographic domain names. I'd also like to acknowledge the Ballarat community, who launched their website on the 27th of July 2006. You'll have the opportunity to hear from all three of these communities today, and I congratulate them on their pioneering endeavours in developing this space for all communities across Australia. It's my hope that these domain names will allow communities to enhance their online presence and promote their community, to develop e-commerce opportunities for local business and therefore underline regional prosperity, become an online communication hub for their local community to share information and interact and therefore empower their local communities. This initiative has been the potential for each community to create significant cultural, social and economic benefits at a local level. For example, a local web provider, NetMaintain, developed and maintains www.bathurst.newsouthwales.au. The site provides an online space for the local arts community, current events and tourism information, a Chamber of Commerce endorsed online business directory, free web-based email for community website members, and a sports directory, which of course is one of the most popular sections of the site. Wollongong newsouthwales.au works very closely with the University of Wollongong. It provides students with the opportunity to work with their local community in building and developing their place on the web through Community Informatics PhD program and open source web development expertise. I'd also like to acknowledge the excellent support of councils and the education sectors in Bathurst and Wollongong. Their support has contributed greatly to the success of these pilots. As a national initiative, AUDA and AU Community Domain Trust, through the endorsement of the Federal Government, have the important and challenging task of implementing and managing the new domain names in the best interests of the Australian community as a whole and of individual Australian communities. I wish AU Domain Trust and AUDA the very best in this endeavour. I'd also look forward greatly to hearing about all the new developments in this space and encourage them to thoroughly engage and involve communities in shaping this exciting initiative in the best interests of the Australian communities. It's been one of the great pleasures of being Minister in the New South Wales Government to be able to support this very important initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Minister John Della Bosca, I was meant to hit that before you spoke, but there you are, that was him. We're next going to hear from the Chair of the Australian Community Domains, former Federal Minister Tony Staley. Tony, please go and give us a few words about how the project is going ahead on this.
Minister, Adam, friends and colleagues, what a delightful occasion. It's nice to be associated with things that are inherently good, as I'm saying, John. Because sometimes people like John and I have been very occasionally associated with things that are not so pleasant. So it's really good to be involved in something good in itself. I was asked if I'd like a PowerPoint presentation for my very, very few remarks here today, and I said, no. I recall that my counterpart in the world scene, the chairman of ICANN, one or two representatives whom we have here today, who's a splendid American eccentric genius, one of the inventors of the web, as I understand it, a brilliant scientist, a man who wears a three-piece suit on the hottest of days, and a real eccentric look. He was hosting a meeting overseas, and a woman was having all sorts of difficulty mounting her PowerPoint, and he said, "Madam, don't you know that power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely." And I'm glad to see, Minister, that you still communicate rather than... I mean, I know you're going to use PowerPoint, but that you've got every reason to use it, and as long as you do not read out every word on it, because we're capable of reading, so just have it there and get the point. I was told some time ago that the system that we have together, all of us, many of whom are in this room, developed for Australia, these community domains as world first. I'm always sceptical when I hear people say that, but I've made many inquiries and I am convinced on advice that that this system that has been developed in this country and for which we're having a national launch today is the one coherent, genuine system that exists in the world to implement the idea of community domains. You've got communities represented in domains, you've got non-profits all over and all. But this one is a world first, a world leader. And Australia can do it in a number of areas, I'm happy to say. AUCD decided, we were told some time ago by some consultants we should call ourselves AUDA, but we're losing that battle. AUDA or AUCD decided after all the community consultations had been held to found the AUCD and decided to fund this, to kick the thing off in the early years with $1.669 million, which we managed to achieve at the expense of the commercial domains. And so that was a very important step to enable us to develop a coherent system. We're delighted and want to thank Census, whose name you see there, not Census, but Census. We want to thank Census for their 80,000 sponsorship to AUCD. That's enormously important for us, and they're our major sponsors. Minister, I want to thank you and your colleagues in the government. Your government has been preeminent in working to this end with local communities, as you have mentioned. I want also to congratulate Wollongong, Ballarat and Bathurst, a number of all of them are represented here today. I want to thank Chris Despain and Joe Lim for the massive amount of work they've done over the years to bring us to this point and the encouragement we had from former Minister Austin, now enjoying himself, I trust, in London. And I want to thank Andy Parkinson for the enormous commitment you've given to kicking this off in a very, very competent way. What can, as you said, Adam, be more important than the local community? To an open house in the evening, home shall men come, as a poet once said. In the end, we come home to our local community. The world assaults us with a constant barrage of stuff. We've got to come home. The local community matters in many ways above all.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Tony Starling, Chair of AUCD. And as we have heard, there are a number of pilot programs, pilot studies done to see how this project would really run to develop the Community Geographic Domain Name Initiative in 3 different places. We're going to hear from representatives of each of those projects. First of all, Peter Hyland. Chris Savage gives his apologies. He's been taken away on urgent business. Peter Hyland, a representative of the Wollongong Community Website Inc. Come on forward, Peter. Tell us how it's going.
My brief today wasn't particularly to tell you about what's happening in Wollongong, but to tell you a little bit about some of the processes involved in actually getting or acquiring one of these community domain names. I'll say very briefly that things are going very well in Wollongong. We launched our site a couple of weeks ago now. We have about 300 community groups represented on our site in our community directory. We have an events calendar running that has events several months into the future. And we're finding that the community at large is quite interested in what we're doing. This launch today will be very important for bringing the existence of our community domain name website back into the perception of people in our own community, and hopefully as a result of today's launch, we'll have even more people playing a part in the Wollongong community website. So my brief was to talk about how you actually go about getting started forming a community website. website group. I'm going to have to apologise to Tony Stanley because I'm a lecturer and I always read my notes. But I'll try to speak beyond the book as well for Tony. Typically what happens if you want to set up one of these community domain websites is you need to get some sort of a working party together. You need people who've got a fire in the belly about this notion of community that Tony and Mr. Delabosco have spoken about so passionately. We'll call them the working party. They need to find a time and place to meet, and they need to make a commitment to do so for some time. They may need to carry out resources for the rest of this process. So once you start being this group, you may need catering facilities, you may need to hire a call, you may need to take out insurance. So the group itself, even this initial working party, does need some small amount of resources. It's been said already that the role of local councils in the AUCD project has been very important. Certainly in the case of Wollongong, we couldn't have proceeded as fast as we did if it hadn't been for the support of the University of Wollongong and Wollongong City Council. If you want to have a GCDN name, you have to be managed by a not-for-profit organisation. So you need to set up a group that's representative of the whole community, that is properly managed, so that we know that it's a stable and well-run entity. It has to have a sustainable vision for the website. Just playing around and having an idea probably isn't going to work, and we don't want communities who are going to be failures in this domain. We want them all to be successful, so the actual process encourages this sense of being properly managed and having a vision. And you also have to have a viable set of skills in the actual community domain name group. So the working party needs to think about all of those things quite early on and drive the project forward. In making sure that your group does represent the community, the working party needs to ensure that you contact the community and you've told people as broadly as possible who you are and what you're trying to achieve. You'll have to do advertising, you'll have to do media releases, you may have to hold multiple public meetings to give people in the community the chance now to inform the working party about how they would like to see the site going ahead. You need to keep documents from this process because the AUCD registration process actually requires you to prove that you do represent your community. You can't be some shonky business group trying to... So you do need to go through that process. The website group may need to define the scope of their community, particularly in a suburb and large cities. In the case of Wollongong, we have lots and lots of suburbs in Wollongong. And we said, well, do we want lots of individual little suburb community domain names, or would you want a big Wollongong community domain name? We actually want both. And so what we're going to find over the next few years is that some suburbs will say, look, we're a big enough entity in our own right that we want our own presence on the web, but we also want to be part of Sydney, or we also want to be part of Bathurst, or we also want to be part of Ballarat. And so this is going to be a fluid process during which the group defines itself. It needs to be properly managed, which means that it needs to set itself up as a legally incorporated entity, such as an incorporated association. So it needs to keep proper minutes, it needs to open a bank account, if it can get its hands on some money. It needs to arrange insurance, which is why it needs the money, and recruit members and keep member details and contact records and so on. The group has to have, and we're not talking about the working party now, we're talking about the actual website community group that are going to drive this process for the next few years. They need to develop fairly quickly a sustainable vision for the website. They need to know what sorts of functions they want to run, how may people be represented on the site, how we raise money for hosting of our site. Initially, we often think that there are simple and cheap ways of doing these. There are, but the problem is simple and cheap ways give you simple and cheap websites. The simple and cheap websites often don't serve much purpose. So there will be costs, and the working group needs to work out how it's going to raise some sort of funds. What role will the local council play? Most local councils are, of course, kindly organisations, and we might want to have them play a very active role. In other cases, we might want to distance ourselves from the council a little bit to give an alternative view of who our community might be. One very key issue for us is, will we allow advertising on our site? Our group in Wollongong have chosen to try not to allow advertising. Other groups may find that that's an excellent way to raise revenue. There's the question of, will you only allow advertising from local companies like Nike, for example? like the Bathurst repair shop. So that's a question that we have to address. And what part will the business community play? If it is a community website, do we want it run for business, by business, or is it really about a broader view of community, all those community groups that I mentioned earlier? You need to make sure that your group, as it forms, has the necessary skills. Although the website itself is a technical problem, we need people with good organisational skills, with management background, with financial and accounting skills. We need people with media or advertising skills to make sure that we're getting in touch with the community through all the other media. When I picked up my hire car this morning, I explained to the girl there who's one of my ex-students that I was off to this launch, and she said, "Why haven't I heard about it?" And I said, "Well, presumably you don't watch television, listen to radio or read the newspaper, because that's where we've advertised the existence of Wollongong Community website." So you need people who can manage those sorts of things for you. And of course you do need technical skills. You need website developers, people who can host the site for you, perhaps some programmers who can set up databases for you, unless of course you make use of the excellent products provided by Census, who are doing so much for the AUCD program. And you need people management skills, because for the Wollongong, because we were a trial project, this was a very long process. We've been 2.5 years doing this, and sometimes it looked as though we were never getting anywhere. And so you needed to be able to manage the group of people who were working on this. And my final slide, don't forget the tea and biscuits. Like any community group, the website group needs to be able to get along with one another. So bring coffee and tea along, have barbecues, have an occasional beer together, because it is a long process. I'm sure the people from Bathurst and Ballarat will share this with me. It's a lot of work, but it's good fun, and we believe in the long run it will be good for the community. So don't forget to try and have fun as you go along yourself.
Great to hear that the Wollongong site is working so well. I probably know Wollongong a little bit better than I know Bathurst and Ballarat. From what I know of Wollongong, this is just the perfect sort of project for that town. The people I know from Wollongong are so proudly from Wollongong, and the services and events there are just so important to the community. I think this would really enhance that sort of passion. Let's hear now from Richard Hancock, who's the CEO of the City of Ballarat. And of course, ballarat.vic.au is one of the pilot programs. Richard.
Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure to be here as part of the national launch today, and I promise you that George and I are probably the only two Victorians in the room we don't feel outnumbered. My role in this, and I have a variation on the PowerPoint thing for Tony. I'm going to read, and George is going to keep up with me at the PowerPoint, so we'll see how it goes. As indicated, I'm the Chief Executive of the City of Ballarat, and we are vigorously pursuing an objective of making Ballarat one of Australia's leading regional ICT centres, and we think we're making good progress. So I'm also the Chair of CBallarat, which is the independent ICT organisation within Ballarat that has taken this process and really made it happen within our own community, and George Fong has been a key part of that. And I thought I'd just spend a little time this morning putting this into context for a city like Ballarat, because I think there's a number of really valuable aspects to a process and a program such as this. We have about 1,000 people working at the Ballarat Technology Park. We have about 70 to 80 companies who are involved in an ICT cluster, and I think it's one of the more successful ones within Australia. And we feel we're starting to reach a critical mass as an IT player, and we are actively seeking investment both from within Australia and from overseas, in India in particular, to come and set up operations in Ballarat. But that's just one part of ICT and what it does for your community. What the process that we are talking about this morning offers really is community capacity building, and that was one of the other real benefits that we immediately saw of this whole process, and one of the reasons why CBallarat and the City of Ballarat decided to support the process so vigorously as we've done. And I think the community portal now is one of the cornerstone projects of our overall ICT strategy for Ballarat, which we're about to now project at least another 10 to 15 years into the future to understand where Ballarat is heading and to make sure that we cover the challenges to our community and to our economy, and I think ICT has a critical part to play in that. What we found in Ballarat is there are a lot of not-for-profit groups who don't have a web presence for a whole range of reasons. In fact, the previous speaker outlined a number of them. They just don't have the capacities or the skills or the knowledge to actually get a web presence. Here is a mechanism by which, with our assistance, they can get that presence and they can start to connect within our own communities. So whilst a web presence connects Ballarat to the world, here is a web presence community portal that connects within Ballarat, and that's where the community capacity building really comes from. And we recognised this very quickly and thought that here was a fantastic mechanism to really make a lot of it happen. The city itself has also sponsored the building and commissioning of an industry-grade service system with a local provider, which I think again is another very nice fit that has come from this whole process. And that issue then on resourcing and costs, we feel, has been taken care of as part of that. And on the software front, a lot of the groups that we're dealing with in Ballarat who want to come on and be part of the community portal, they're not geeks. I'm not a geek. I don't understand the technology, but I understand what this can deliver into our community, which is why we support it. And the community groups we're dealing with will never be HTML experts, but we've supported and used user-friendly content management systems from the open source community to give these groups the capacity to manage and control their own content, which is obviously a critical thing when you're trying to build capacity in the community. You want to give flexibility into that whole process. One of the really exciting things in Ballarat, and I'll briefly finish with this, is that we are connecting this process with another program through another group that I chair in Ballarat called Lead On. And that program is going to bring together young people from throughout our community, including those who are in the traditional school system and those who are not, the disenfranchised, the ones that have dropped out of the traditional school system, in a way that will enable them to come and work with the community groups to help them directly get their presence on the portal. And we are intending that this process called YLab will in fact give these young people skills and experience that will actually enable them to go back out into the workforce on the completion with some self-confidence. And this is a fantastic value add that we get from this community portal in Ballarat. And we believe that the young people who participate, they'll have ongoing relationships with many of these community groups, and we will start to see a connectedness in Ballarat that's not been possible prior to the portal. And I think George was saying to me before that this has been 4 years of hard work. George and Sue Ballarat have actively pursued this project for over that period of time, and I think it's a great initiative. We recognise there's a cyclical nature to many of these things, and we want to make sure that we've got sustainability built into our model. The council will continue to be a major supporter, as will see Ballarat, to make sure that it can live on, and eventually we'll find perhaps another home for it somewhere else in the community once that capacity is being delivered. So well done to the National Launch. Absolute pleasure to be part of the whole community portal program. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. That YLab in particular sounds like a very exciting project. You might not be a geek, Richard, but you're amongst friends. If you stay around for a little while after, I'll bring you into the geek world. I'll teach you to speak Klingon and all those things with your brothers. The Bathurst community website, bathurst.nsw.au, one of the pilot sites. Let's speak to one of the members of the Bathurst Community Website Management Committee, Michael Clancy.
Welcome, Minister Del Bosco and distinguished guests. I'd like to speak to you today, just take a few minutes of your time to outline the approach taken by Bathurst Community Website to achieve its goal of creating a truly community-owned website. In order to keep the community website relevant, fresh and active, Bathurst Community Website has taken the view that in developing the website, it's just as important to establish processes which ensure the broader community can take ownership of the website as it is to put together the mechanics of an appealing and user-friendly website. To be relevant, the website has to provide information that the users would want to know about the local community. To achieve this, we spend a lot of time consulting with members of the community regarding the sorts of information they'd like to see in an online, one-stop shop for Bathurst. The consultation included public forums, where the concept of a community website was explained and interested individuals and organisations were identified. This was followed up by a number of workshops where those interested individuals and organisations ended up identifying major information categories and key tools that would form the basis of the website. Having determined this, it was decided that it was not good enough that this snapshot, gathered at a particular point in time, be the ongoing image for Bathurst. Instead, we realised that to maintain relevance to our users, it was essential that we were able to gain feedback on an ongoing basis from the community and the users of the site. To facilitate this, the website incorporates an online feedback form which can be used to make suggestions, criticisms and complaints. As well as this, we've included a statistical package which analyses site use. Another key aspect to gaining quality feedback is to ensure that the management committee keeps in touch with the community. This is achieved through strong networks of individual members and their networks that they have within the community. I can't emphasise strongly enough that the management committee of any community website organisation needs to have members with strong connections to the community at the grassroots level. Finally, gaining all this information is of absolute no use unless you do something with it. Our management committee evaluates the performance of the website by systematically reviewing all this information on a monthly basis and recommends action where appropriate. One of the things that we've learned through our experience is that you don't have to do it all yourself, but to develop community ownership of the website, it is in fact far better if you don't do it all yourself. The approach we have taken is one of developing strategic partnerships with organisations who can either provide us with the information or can provide us with the support to publish that information. Bathurst, probably like every community in Australia, has organisations which provide some form of information service. Each of these organisations has an important part of the community information jigsaw. The challenge for the community website organisations is to identify these organisations and work with them to establish collaborative networks of information provision so that the community website displays as much of the complete picture as possible. Finding willing workers to put together this information is yet another challenge. A key strategic partner for us in Bathurst was the local Information Enablement Centre, supported by our local council. This organisation already had a large amount of information and access to a network of volunteers that kept this information up to date. But as was mentioned by the previous speaker, this particular organisation did not have computer technology, and its volunteers had very little information about how to use the internet. So it was combining with Bathurst Community website that we were able to put this key information together. Another way of getting organisations to provide information was to offer them a space in an easy-to-find virtual address, which could be part of a national chain of virtual community shopfronts. Once organisations could see the benefit of establishing a collaborative relationship with us, we would formalise the agreement through mechanisms such as memorandum of understandings or sponsorship agreements. To keep content fresh and active, you need to have active involvement of the community in the operation of the website. One of the structures we're developing at Bathurst Community website is a subcommittee structure that has editorial responsibility for each of the key information category sections of our site. Another way of keeping the information fresh and active is to allow businesses and community organisations the ability to manage their own content. We achieve this by offering a My Listing facility, which enables registered contributors online access to update their own content. This interactivity is an important part of the site. The website is not only a place where users can find information about Bathurst, but it's also a place where they can contribute information through our interactive tools such as the event calendar or the Bathurst directory. Finally, as also was mentioned by one of the previous speakers, we have a system of involving the educational communities in our town. And it's one of the major ways that we intend to remain vibrant. It does this by providing opportunity for students in the town to participate in the subcommittee structure, to provide content, and by providing workplace learning opportunities for school students who are undertaking vocational courses as part of their senior schooling. On our home page, you can see there we have across the top there the major category areas which were determined as being the most important for the most relevant for the people we consulted, and we also have another example of the sorts of forms where people can suggest an event for our event calendar or to register so that they can maintain their own information. It's hoped by adopting these strategies that I've outlined today that we can strengthen the feeling of ownership of the website by our community and help keep it relevant, fresh and active.
What's going down in Bathurst. Now, our next speaker, I referred to her by her correct name when I first got here, but she was a little bit slow on the uptake because she's just married, recently back from honeymoon, but getting used to the fact now that her name is Prue Dennis. Congratulations on the wedding. 5 weeks in South America, back into the thick of it with Census. She's the General Manager of Corporate Affairs. Census, of course, is the foundation partner of the entire project. Please tell us about that, Prue.
Very close. Minister Della Bosca, the Honourable Tony Staley, it's a pleasure for us Census to be here today in an event we're extremely proud of. We believe this is an extremely important step in connecting and engaging local communities. Through our partnership, Census and .au community domains will help Australians find information when they need it, both quickly and easily. I'll leave one PowerPoint slide. This alliance is testament to us both achieving our common goals. At Census, our goal is to help Australians find, buy and sell. Connecting and supporting local communities is at the heart of what we do. Like this initiative, Census is also continually striving to be at the forefront of innovation and technology. With .AUCD, Census is making local information available from our Census network of online sites. The Census network is accessed by 4 million Australians every day and includes well-known information sources such as the Yellow Pages, White Pages, City Search, Where Is, UBD, census.com.au, Census 1234, and most recently launched the Go State Travel and Accommodation Finder. Let me give you an example as to how Census will assist .AUCD. Consider you are looking for a local restaurant, a florist, a plumber. This partnership will allow you to do just that through your local community website. By having access to yellowpages.com.au online information, people will now be able to go and find that information from a trusted, reliable source that meets their needs. So whether searching for products, places or people, local communities can access this relevant and meaningful information to where they are when they need it. This partnership also supports our small and medium-sized business advertisers. By enabling local search functionality on the community websites, we will continue our commitment to ensure that our customers are found by potential consumers or buyers as many times as possible. Census's alliance with .AUCD further demonstrates our commitment to investing in local communities. We recently launched the Census in the Local Community program, which encompasses a wide range of community investment programs. For example, Census is partnering with other organisations to deliver positive change in the community. The Smith family and Green PC are just two of our newest partnerships, both providing content to Australians in need with information through technology. Census also invests in regional communities in which we operate. Since launching the Census in the Community program in February this year, we've invested in a range of local community partnerships. We also encourage our staff to get involved with local communities by giving them the access to have a day's paid or unpaid volunteer leave each year, as well as providing matched staff donations for all of our staff. Our commitment also extends to our 600,000 or so small and medium-sized customers. We've been researching the small business sector each quarter for approximately 13 years, helping to provide a snapshot of this vital sector to allow small business operators and policymakers to make more informed decisions. Other small business initiatives include our Small Business Support Program, in which we partner with state governments to support major small business events, such as Small Business September in New South Wales. Soon to be released, entitled Small Business Big Opportunity, Census is also developing a free guide for small businesses on smart marketing and advertising. So as I said earlier, you can see that connecting and supporting local communities is at the heart of what we do at Census. In closing, and on behalf of Census, I'd like to thank AU Community Domains for giving us the opportunity to be involved in this world-first and very exciting initiative. I have no doubt that this initiative will be embraced and applauded by local communities throughout Australia and be hugely successful. So congratulations and good luck to all those involved for the exciting journey that lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Drew Deniz, General Manager of Corporate Affairs at Census. Now, our final speaker, this is really, it's her big day today. I understand it'll be very nerve-wracking because they had thrown a party, maybe no one's going to show up. We're all here, we're all excited, we're all behind you. The General Manager of .au Community Domains, Leonie Parkinson.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks, Minister, and I'd like to thank pilot groups for all the work they've done over the years to help make this a reality. I'd also like to thank our test pilot sites that have helped us in the last few months work on the services, and I'd like to thank Census for their partnership. And most of all, I think I would speak on behalf of all speakers. I'd like to thank Tony Staley for throwing that unbelievable challenge not to use PowerPoint. So I think it's thrown us all a little bit. I want to use Anyway, I really want to thank you all for coming here today because I think it's a very exciting project, as we've all said, and it's not about me, and it's not about AUCD, it's about the communities. It's about the communities getting power and this building capacity is the main issue here. I'd also like to thank Oz Registry as well because they're providing their service free of charge because it is a community initiative. Just briefly like to talk about what AUCD is and what our roles are. We're really here to assess the CGDN and what a horrible acronym it is, but we can't do anything better, applications to make sure that we protect and preserve the names of the local community. We're also there to help communities, because as you've heard from the pilot groups, it takes a lot of work, and we have to do a lot to actually, one, be eligible to apply, and two, to get a community website up and running and get the community involved, and actively involved. So we're here to provide services to help communities do that. I'm not looking at the slides too much. One of the things that we've done is develop a how-to kit, and I also want to thank the University of Wollongong staff and students because they put a lot of work in initially coming up with what they thought would be good in the how-to kit from the pilot side. The how-to kit is available online, free of charge. It goes through all the different things that you need to do to apply, because there are a lot of things that you need to provide to make sure that we're preserving the names of the community. The other thing that we've been working on is a community website box. Now this is just an optional product. It's just there to help those communities that might struggle with how to go about getting their own website. It's all self-managed, user-friendly, you don't have to be a technical person. And we've tested both our how-to kits and our site in a box on 2 test communities just to make sure they actually do what communities would like. And we've tested them on Coonawarra, which is actually in Victoria, for the Coonawarra Sustainability Centre, and Wyndham in WA, which is very remote north WA. It's in 900k north of Broome, was it? 1,000 k's. To give you some idea how remote and how high it is, and they're both here today. And it's a telecentre that we apply for. And I'd just like to say that they have just been approved with their application, so well done, congratulations, and they're just working on their websites at the moment. And they've been working on what we call community site in the box. And it's really just, as I said, optional. It's just there to help those communities that might struggle to get a website up. Read it. This is just to give you an idea of what it would look like. Just a homepage is Wyndham's example, so you can put your own images and everything on there. And also available is issuing your own individual geographic emails to them. They have to actually come to your website, so that ensures that you've got a lot of traffic going there too. One of the things that's available is a directory, and you can rename the directories to anything you like. And there's also, and the community can put on their own listings. Everything's vetted by our website manager. And this is where we've worked with Census to have online, localised, up-to-date businesses. Just to give you an example of one, and that will bring up the businesses in your local area on the map. There's news and events available, and the community can actually put it on themselves by here. So you are actually connecting the community, empowering the community, and getting all the information. It's a very user-friendly system. This is the back end, and all you need to do is have access to a computer, so just the web browser is all you need. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we launched the names today, so everyone can actually get online today and apply, see if the names are available, and how to click there. And I'm pleased to say we've already, even though it was just launched this morning, had 2 applications, which is quite extraordinary. So. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I think it's all very exciting. I think the most important thing is what Tony said is there's no more important thing than community. If we can empower the community and have real grassroots stuff happening, and connection is the key. So I want to thank you all very much. Adam, it'd be great.
I just noticed on the Wyndham website, they're celebrating your 120th birthday this year, so happy birthday, Wyndham. And I noticed a little note, Tony, I hope you picked this up as well, proudly saying that Wyndham, the cheapest fuel in all of the Kimberleys. So next time you're on the Prime Minister, trying to sort this petrol thing out, get to Wyndham, they're just giving the stuff away up there. I just want to say quickly, I've got a 17-month-old daughter, and that's really changed my life. And I was talking to my wife just the other day about the world she's going to grow up in compared to the world we lived in. Remember, you'd always look back at aspects of your parents when they were growing up and go, that was so lame. That was how could you do that when you didn't have mobile phones or whatever? And the example I gave the other day was that my daughter will try and get her head around how, when I was growing up, we used to take photos. She'd say, so you'd take a photo, and then you'd have to wait a couple of months till you'd taken another 35 photos. You'd take the camera down to the shop, you'd take something out of the back of the camera, you'd give it to some guy you'd never met before. You'd come back a week later, and if you took a really crap photo, you still had to pay for it. That's totally weird. And I wouldn't be surprised also if the idea that we would have to explain to my daughter, well, if there was something on in the local area, you might have read about it in the paper, or you just put a notice on the telegraph pole, or you'd write it on a bit of paper and you go around and you put bits of paper under other people's doors. And maybe that's the way people would hear about what was going on in the local area. Hopefully, in a world where there is this sort of community domain concept going on, she will again look at us as though we were old, lame and out of touch. I think this is a fantastic proposal. Congratulations on the launch. It's great to hear you've already had that really solid feedback just today. So officially launched, let's get out there and do it. Have a great day.